Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Thanks for watching and subscribing on YouTube, for listening to us on iTunes and also on Google Play. Here's how good this guy is. A couple of years ago, he was at a function to help raise money for disabled jockeys. I was going to introduce him, and I went over to Todd Pletcher, and I said, "What year were you inducted in the Hall of Fame?" I should know this stuff, but I just assumed it. And he hasn't been in the Hall of Fame yet because he's been so good, so fast, so young that he hasn't got his 25 years in, which is a qualification for a trainer to be up for Hall of Fame election. I will predict this. In a couple more years, when he is ready for Hall of Fame election, first ballot guaranteed. And Todd Pletcher joins us from Saratoga now. Todd, thanks for being on.
My pleasure, Kenny.
Well, you have done a lot in a short period of time. Do you ever look back and go, wow, this has been a pretty quick ride and a fun ride, I hope, for you along the way?
Well, we've been very fortunate, and it's been a lot of fun. It definitely has. The one thing about this business, sometimes you don't have time to really sit back and reflect on things. So, every once in a while you try to look at some old photos or trophies or what have you, and just kind of appreciate how blessed we've been to train some really, really good horses over the years.
Now, 95, I believe you take your license out and you get your first winner in 96. Is that right? Longing through there, the time frame?
Yeah, I started actually December, I want to say the first week in December, took some horses on my own at Hialeah. And then we had, I think, our first runner in January at Gulfstream, maybe, and then first winner in February at Gulfstream. So, we were fortunate. We only had 7 horses when we started, but they were all horses that had their conditions left, and I think we were able to win at least Wood Race with all 7 of those, and that kind of got us going.
And I certainly don't want to paint the picture like this is some overnight sensation, like you say, from this is when he started 23, 24 years ago. But actually, you started about age 7, I think I read. Or you told me, with your dad, Jake, who's in the business, and you were walking hots for him at that time, right? You were like 6, 7 years old. You were a kid.
Yeah, I went, I'd go out to the barn with my dad, on weekends or, anytime that I could. And, I think when you're young like that and you're just you're learning things about the business and you don't even realize that you are learning. But, he was always good to have me do some sort of chores, whether it was, mixing feed or maybe walking a horse that was pretty calm, and just, let me get a feel for it at an early age.
Well, it's a good dad not to give you the rambunctious horse.
Yeah. He waited until I was 8 or 9 for that.
That's the one that was dragging you around the barn.
Right.
Was there something you pick up that you look at now and you go, wow, my dad, I remember that, and that's what I still do to this day, 40-some years later, that I was doing when I was a boy?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the business has changed, and yet, the basics are still very much the same as they were back then. And I think one of the things that you learn as a trainer when you're, working for another trainer is a lot of the principles are found out through trial and error. So, a lot of these experienced guys that you learn from do things a certain way because over the years they've learned it from someone else who, went through the trials and errors of figuring out a system. So, I think, the one thing that I really enjoyed as a child, and one of the things that my dad both of my parents were very helpful in trying to put me on the right path. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was going around to the sales, the yearling sales with my dad. And, at an early age, he was teaching me about conformation, and certainly those things, still apply today. A good looking horse and a correct horse are the same now as they were back in the 70s.
And you can kind of spot the athlete in a horse, can't you? I mean, you can see it as much as you've been around. This horse looks like an athlete, just like if you watched a guy come out on a football field. Some guys just look like they're football players.
Absolutely, and it's you can learn a lot just by studying a horse's conformation and watching a horse walk, and at a young age like that, like you said, the athletes stand out as such. And sometimes if you just try to keep it as simple as that, without overthinking it, you can hopefully find some of the right ones.
Talking with a great trainer, Todd Pletcher, 3 Belmont wins, 2 Kentucky Derbies, 9 Breeders' Cups, 7 times the Eclipse Award for Outstanding Trainer. And all this in less than 25 years in the business as the head trainer. During that time, you were going to University of Arizona, I believe, maybe like your sophomore, junior year. You go to work for a guy named Wayne Lukas in the summer. What was that like when you first meet Wayne Lukas?
Well, my dad and Wayne trained quarter horses at the same time. So my dad had been friendly with him for a while. And one of the things that I wanted to do, and my dad advised me, my parents advised me, let's, if you want to train horses, they were adamant that I get a college degree, but they also felt like during the summers, instead of just working for my dad, to work for some other trainers. So I spent one summer at Arlington Park grooming horses for Wayne, and then I spent another summer grooming horses for Henry Marino, and I spent another summer grooming horses for Charlie Whittingham. So, those are just invaluable experiences, and you learn so much from the way subtle things that each trainer does a little bit differently. And so it was a great foundation. But really what it did for me was it gave me that introduction to Wayne, and gave me the opportunity when I did graduate from college to be fortunate enough to land a job with Wayne, and ended up going in 1989 to Belmont Park to work for Wayne and his son Jeff, who Jeff was really a key part of Wayne's organization, and really a brilliant horse person, and a great coach and great teacher. He was a stern taskmaster, and you had to make sure you were on your game. So he was a great person to learn from.
And, one of the tragedies there, I'm glad you mentioned Jeff. I don't want people to ever forget him. It was got run over by Tabasco Cat, people probably know, had sustained brain injury and all, and died much too young later on. Was never the same. But, I remember meeting Jeff early on too, and he might have been the equal of his old man. I don't know, but he certainly had the makings of that. And I know you had a great friendship with him.
I did, and it's a tragic loss. I think without a doubt, Jeff would have gone on to be an extremely successful horse trainer on his own when that time came. And he was such a big part of the Lukas organization during their very, very best years. But he was also influential to so many of us, like Dallas Stewart and Mark Hennig and Karen McLaughlin. We all spent as much time, or in some cases even more, working with Jeff than Wayne. So, they were a great team and great people to learn from.
You mentioned Karen and Dallas and Mark, and I think some of you got together, what was it, 5-6 Belmonts ago, had like a little reunion. I think Angel Cordero came by, and it was kind of to honor Wayne. I don't know what was the milestone. I can't remember that, but I remember you were telling me it was quite an interesting dinner party, I imagine you guys had.
It was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to have all those guys. And as you can imagine, just with Wayne and Angel Cordero alone, there wasn't much room for anyone else to tell stories. But we had a great time, and it was great to kind of have a reunion of sorts.
Wayne said, we had him on the show a couple of weeks ago or so, Todd, and he singing your praises, and he mentioned that he just saw that you were one of those guys that were going to make it. He saw that in you. When did you kind of feel like, I'm ready to go on my own, and I think I'll do pretty well in this business, when you decide to leave as the assistant to Wayne to go out on your own in 95?
To be honest with you, it was a very intimidating situation at that time. Wayne had such a deep and strong stable, and we were winning Breeders' Cups and Triple Crown races, and that that particular year we had Thunder Gulch, who won the Derby and the Belmont, and Timber Country won the Preakness, and Thunder Gulch won the Travers. And so it was just, it was literally the best of times. And it was, Wayne was great to work for and to be around those kind of horses. and to think about taking that step and going on your own and not really knowing what you're going to have. And like I said, when I started, I had 7 horses, none of which had won a race, which was great for me because I had a lot of conditions left. But, to leave the organization that Wayne had and the depth of talent that he had and try, going out on your own, I wasn't sure that I was going to make it. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but I just felt like for me, it was time to give it a try. And, it's one of those things, if you don't make that move, you kind of, as an assistant, I think a lot of times you expect, hopefully someone's going to call you and say, hey, I got 30 really nice horses I want you to train.
Yeah.
But, in reality, it seldomly works that way. And you just gotta go out there. And, one of the great things about the horse industry is everyone gets an opportunity. And if you go out there and you train some horses on your own, you're going to pick some up. And if you can produce results, then you're going to get a chance. So that was pretty much it. But it was intimidating. It was something that I thought a lot about and talked to my family a lot about before making the move.
And it seems to have worked out pretty well for you, Todd, if you don't mind me saying.
Like I said, we've been very fortunate. We really have.
Well, you set the single season earnings record in 2005, then you break it the next year, and that was also the year that you broke one of Lukas's records, another Lukas record, that you broke with the overall amount of stakes wins that you had, like 93, I believe, something the very next year. When you're breaking Wayne's records, did he ever call you?
Yeah, we still call each other after, big races and, congratulate each other. And I think one of Wayne's legacies, in addition to being, in my opinion, the greatest horse trainer of all time, is that he's also produced some assistants that have gone on and done very well. So, he really contributed to the industry in so many different ways.
Then you go from that big personality that is Wayne Lukas, that, is a salesman and a showman as well as a great trainer. And, you mentioned Henry Marino in there, and also Charlie Whittingham, who's that ex-Marine tough guy that I always enjoyed interviewing, but I got to tell you, I was always a little bit intimidated by Charlie, back in the 80s there when I first met him with Ferdinand's, actually when I first crossed paths with him, and then later on Sunday Silence, and knew him a little better by that time.
Yeah, he was a very different personality than Wayne, but he was also a very, very genuine man. And I really, really enjoyed the brief time that I worked for him. And I remember, it actually worked out because I was going to the University of Arizona, that I actually got school credits for grooming for him for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I had to send him some stuff to sign and this and that, which, you kind of are scared to ask a guy like that to have to do that. But to tell you, to give you an idea of how nice of a man he was, when I finished my summer with him, I sent him a thank you letter just saying how much I appreciated everything and how much, I learned and what have you. And so I sent that to him. And at the Breeders' Cup that November, I went to Churchill, and, I said, I'm going to go by and see Mr. Whittingham at the barn. And, he probably won't even remember who I am, but I'll go by and say hi to him. And literally when I got within eye range of him, he walked over to me, and the first thing he said was, I really appreciate you sending me that letter. That was really nice of you. And it just stuck with me, like what a man that literally had accomplished everything in this industry, and a legendary horse trainer, and it's just so kind to even think about that.
Yeah. He had a great wit too, didn't he? Very dry wit. I remember I'm up there with Ferdinand. Remember he trained Ferdinand like before dawn. You couldn't even see him out there. And I remember standing over there, and several reporters were there and all, and I said, Mr. Whittingham, I can't even see your horse out there. He said, it doesn't matter, I can.
No, he had a great sense of humor, but he was he was prided himself on being the first guy on the track. And I remember the summer that I worked for him, came by the afternoon before I started to introduce myself. So when I was leaving, I said, "What time should I be here tomorrow?" And he said, "Early." And so I said, "Okay." I'm thinking to myself, I'll be there at 4:15, and I got there at 4:15, and he was already there. So it's like that was one of the things. As a groom, you knew that when the gate opened at 5:30, your horse needed to be ready to walk onto the track.
What time do you get to the track now?
I'm usually a 4:30 guy.
Yeah.
That's sort of our target date, our target time this time of the year. Every once in a while, the late fall or winter months when you're in New York, you can not come in quite as early. But once you get into that routine of sort of starting at that time, it's kind of hard to get out of.
2007, a horse named Rags to Riches became the first filly since 1905 to win the Belmont Stakes, trained by Todd Pletcher. Big win, obviously, for you at that time. And then I'm going to come back to the old Charlie Whittingham joke that I think he told everybody, not just me, that he's on a plane and the guy says, what do you do? And he said, "I'm a horse trainer." He said, "You ever won the Kentucky Derby?" At that time he hadn't, pre-Ferdinand. He said, "No, I haven't won the Derby." And the guy says, "You're no horse trainer." I think Charlie told that about it. He probably told that after he won with Ferdinand probably 100 times or more.
I'll bet.
But, when you win with Super Saver and you win that Derby, even though like you already had Rags to Riches, you already had success, you'd set records and broken records. But I remember I always hated to ask you when I'd come up on the NBC shows. And it seemed like they always wanted me to come up and ask you about when you're going to win the Derby. And you were always so nice about it to me. I think one year I even said, "Hey, what are you up to today?" as we were walking over, if you remember. Because, what are you supposed to say? It was definitely something that was, that was wearing on me. And at the same time, you feel so fortunate to have qualified that many horses to get to the Derby. And the one thing that I always enjoyed was how important it was to the owners and how much, they enjoyed being a part of the Derby. But at the same time, it's more fun when you win, for sure. And so I think at the time Super Saver won, I think we had started 24 horses in the Derby, and in a lot of those cases there were 4 or 5 in 1 year. So it wasn't like we'd gone 24 years without winning the Derby, but the numbers were piling up, and so it was as the Rags to Riches win in the Belmont, I think, was the most exciting race for me still to this date. Mm-hmm.
And the Super Saver win was almost more of a relief. And you hate to say that about winning the Derby, that it wasn't maybe it wasn't quite as emotional to me as it should have been, because I felt like I needed to get that done. And so now to be fortunate enough to come back with another one, that I think it's just in some ways I enjoyed the second one even more.
I was going to say, because I got to interview you right after that with Always Dreaming. You remember that? And we were out there at Churchill Downs, and I thought that was probably, I saw the emotion. I think that I understand exactly what you're saying, because Super Saver would be a relief, and then to do it again, now you've done it again. And with Always Dreaming, I thought that was a real special moment for you.
It really was. And, I think the one thing that when you get emotional in races like that, a lot of it stems from the people around you and their reaction to it. And, I remember when Always Dreaming won and my mom was crying, and, it really, those are the moments that really hit you.
This guy's so cool that one year at Saratoga, I don't know if you remember this, we're going to do an interview, and as oft happens in TV, we didn't do the interview right as we were supposed to. So you started saddling the horse, and I kind of and you gave me the nod. It was okay to continue the interview. Remember that? They threw it to me.
I do.
And I said,
I can't remember what race it was, but I do remember that.
I can't remember. I wish I should remember the race. But anyway, I do the interview with Todd, and Todd's putting the saddle on, and they're in the truck going, "Wow, that's amazing. That you were so cool, and you're giving great answers, and you're doing that." I'm still amazed by that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
I bet you couldn't do it before the Derby. I bet if I come in the Derby, you'd smack me in the head.
might have to run you over then.
Yeah, that. But I'm going to ask you about Saratoga. I know you're busy. I know you're up there. You've had great success at Saratoga. 5 in a row at one time. You were the leading trainer. You're always in the hunt. If you're not the leading trainer, you're right there. What is it about Saratoga, Todd, that makes it just so special for not just trainers to be there, but for racing fans to come to that great place? I believe, as the great Red Smith wrote, you drive, 3 hours north from New York City, and you make a left on Union Avenue and go back 100 years in time.
It's I think that's exactly what it is. It's the tradition, and that's the one thing that concerns me a little bit when we stretch this meet out. When I came to work for Wayne in 1989, it was a 24-day meet, so it was right. You were here during the month of August, and it was just every day had just a special feel about it, and the atmosphere was fun and intense, and just every day there was a real high quality stake race, and it was so my concern over stretching it out now over 8 weeks and 40 days is I just hope that it never loses that real special feeling that it has. But it's the preservation that they've done with the barn areas and the you kind of in some ways feel like you're going back in time a bit when you come here.
Yeah, and the picnic atmosphere for the families, it's great, like you say. But yeah, I kind of was curious about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's one thing they'll look at. When you had that short period of time, you could go up there. Now, is it so unique? Do you want to go up there? Oh, well, I don't know. I can wait and go later in the year now, or go earlier in the year. I hope it works out, because it's one of my 3 favorite tracks. I love going to Saratoga.
No question. It's the quality of racing is still the very best, and every maiden 2-year-old race is potentially another Breeders' Cup or Triple Crown type horse. So it's the quality is still there.
And you know that well. I imagine you've got a few 2-year-olds that people are going to be looking at.
I hope so. That's what keeps trainers going every year, is to have those 2-year-olds to look forward to.
I'm gonna go back quick. I'm gonna let you go, but I want to go back quickly to you mentioned earlier about just getting to the Derby, how important that is. And really you look back, and of course Lukas had that great string. You've had that string. Baffert's had that string. Very few guys, even great trainers out there, even guys that have gone to the Hall of Fame. It says something to me just to get in there. It's like a good basketball coach that, maybe they don't win it all the time, but they're going to be in that final 16 or that Elite 8. They're still in the game, and it's something that maybe people take for granted, because the guys like you and Baffert and Lukas kind of make it look easy for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that I think is sort of, the programs that we build, the type of horses that we're looking to buy, at the yearling sales and at the 2-year-old sales, and also is sort of what, the kind of races that our clients are trying to win. So, I think most cases you're only as good as the athlete you're training, but, I think our program seems to work well for that. And, a lot of our success has been with 3-year-olds, not only, through some of the Triple Crown races, but particularly the prep races leading up to them. And, those are some huge races as well, with great purses and the kind of races that create some stallion potential. And really at the end of the day, that's what most of our clients are hoping to produce, or horses in the retiring to stud, and that's kind of what keeps the income generated to bring in another crop.
Todd, man, I can't thank you enough for your time, and I just want everybody to know, here's the kind of guy Todd Pletcher is. I remember I'm doing this disabled jockeys benefit, and I told you the story when I was getting ready to put him in the Hall of Fame prematurely, even though we all know he's a lock to be in it. But they told me, I said, Todd's going to be here. I think it was like Tuesday at Derby week. I said, Todd's not going to be here. He's got all these horses coming in the Derby. He's going to drive to Lexington at Keeneland and do this. He's going to be up in the crack of dawn. And I look out there, and there you are. And you continue to do that and show up and support disabled jockeys, among other charities that you do, in addition to getting up before everybody else's alarm goes off. So thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. And, that's a very important event. And this, as we all know, it's a dangerous game, and we got to take care of our athletes and horses and jockeys alike.
Todd, thanks for being on. I hope you come back someday.
It's my pleasure, Kenny. I'd love to.
All right. Thank you so much.